At San Francisco International Airport, under the cover of night, 4 passenger-loaded aircraft were patiently waiting to take off. Suddenly, they saw something that made their blood run cold. A plane was speeding toward them, ready to land. It requested landing clearance from ATC, and ATC said, "Cleared to land." At first, the pilots thought, maybe it's just a mistake. Maybe it'll align itself with an empty runway. But what happened next was anything but normal. This plane was heading straight for them. Welcome back to another heart-pounding episode from Who. This shocking event didn't happen long ago. It was July 7th, 2017. Air Canada Flight 759 took off from Toronto with 135 passengers and 5 crew members on board. It was a routine flight expected to land in San Francisco in just over 5 hours. The pilots, both highly experienced, they had landed at this airport many times before. But today was different. Today was going to become a case study in aviation history. As the flight neared San Francisco, everything seemed fine. They contacted ATC and prepared to land. San Francisco Airport has 4 runways, but at any given time, only 2 can be used, depending on wind direction. That day, the wind was blowing from the west, so runways 28 left and 28 right were active, but then things started to unravel. Runway 28L was closed for maintenance. Its lights were off, so ATC gave clearance to land on runway 28R. Simple, right? Wrong. Since the pilots had landed here before, they expected to see 2 parallel runway lights. They'd pick the right one and land. But that assumption led to their first huge mistake. You see, flanking. Both runways are taxiways, green-lit paths used by planes moving to and from terminals. But in the darkness, the pilots confused the taxiway lights for runway 28R and the real runway lights. They mistook those for 28L. But the real danger, they didn't even see coming, because on that taxiway were 4 fully loaded planes just waiting to take off. 3 were from United Airlines. 1 was Philippine Airlines. Over 1,000 passengers, full tanks of fuel, and only 100 meters between disaster and survival. Air Canada 759 aligned itself not with the runway, but with the taxiway. From the control tower, it was nearly impossible to tell what was happening. But here's the question. Why weren't the pilots informed that 28L was closed? The information was there, buried in a NOTAM, a Notice to Air Missions. But the reality? NOTAMs are lengthy and often hard to read. The closure of 28L? It was missed. Second big mistake. Now comes the visual approach, granted by ATC. This means the pilots had to find the runway themselves, visually, and align the plane manually. Normally, this isn't a problem in good weather, but many accidents have happened because pilots misjudge the approach. That's why most still use the instrument guidance system. It confirms you're landing on the correct runway, but to activate it, you need to enter the runway number. Modern planes do this automatically, but this was an Airbus A320. It had to be done manually. The pilots didn't do it. Third big mistake. Why so many mistakes? It was 11:05 p.m., and the pilots had been flying for 19 hours, with no real rest. Canadian fatigue rules? At the time, less strict than US regulations. So we've covered the 3 major pilot errors. But now, what about the 4 aircraft waiting on that taxiway? Why didn't they report that Air Canada was landing on the wrong strip? Because at San Francisco, it's normal for pilots to approach slightly from the right to avoid flying over populated areas, to avoid noise pollution. So all 4 pilots assumed Air Canada would correct its course, but it didn't. And as the plane came closer and still didn't align, the pilot of the Philippine Airlines plane switched on the landing lights, a warning. Inside the cockpit, Air Canada's pilots noticed something. Strange lights. Something wasn't right. They quickly radioed ATC. ATC responded, 28R is clear, you're good to land. But ATC didn't know. They weren't on 28R. They were about to land on the taxiway. Normally, another controller would monitor ground traffic. But that night, due to low traffic, only one controller was handling everything. Luckily, the waiting pilots were listening to this conversation. They began to panic. The pilot of United 1, the first in line, didn't wait. He immediately messaged ATC. Go around, ATC ordered Air Canada. By the time the command was received, the Air Canada plane was just feet above the 3rd aircraft in line. 1 more second of delay, and this would have become the deadliest accident in aviation history. Over 1,300 lives, fully fueled planes, and collision just seconds away. A full investigation followed, and it confirmed Air Canada 759's pilots were at fault. They didn't read the NOTAMs. They didn't activate the guidance system. They made critical errors. As a result, new rules were implemented. No more visual approaches when parallel runways are closed. Ground traffic controllers must be present, even during off-peak hours. Luck, timing, and a quick decision. That's all that saved over 1,000 lives that night. If you found this story as unbelievable and terrifying as we did, like, share, and tell us what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching another gripping episode by Who. We'll see you again soon with another unreal true story. Till then, subscribe our channel